Cole.
You're kidding. Just one shot?
They're not all zombies, Doug. How do you fight this thing?
Maybe we could drown it in A1 sauce.
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back.
It's a dance song to get down with. About 6 feet under. Get down.
Ooh, I love this song. I'm hung up in a grave situation.
And now we come to the thrilling final episode of our radio drama.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode 280 of the Rotten Reviews podcast. I just want to say thank you very much for everyone who's been checking out the podcast lately. If you're a returning listener, thank you for showing up each and every single week. If you're a new listener, thank you for taking the time to check out this episode, and hopefully you'll stick around and check out the back catalog of other episodes as well. Still crazy to think that we're on episode 280. That's crazy. It just feels like last month that we started the podcast, and I enjoy doing this so much, and I'm glad that people enjoy listening to me talk about movies and pretending like I know what I'm doing each and every single week, essentially. So with that being said, again, thank you everyone for this new year. Thank you for last year and the year before that. I appreciate everyone's time, and yeah, just thank you. But you guys didn't show up to this episode to listen to me kiss your ass, because that's not why you're here. You're here to listen to me talk about a movie called The Dark Half from 1993. You can watch this one for free on Amazon Prime. But before we do get going into the episode too far ahead, let's do a little bit of housekeeping like we like to do each and every single week.
Housekeeping?
I don't think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping?
Could you come back in an hour?
Housekeeping, you want towel?
More towels. Need sleepy.
Housekeeping, you want mint for pillow?
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
No matter whatever podcast platform you're deciding to listen to this episode on, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, a share, whatever you can do. If it's an app that has a rating, feel free to leave a written review or a rating review, a score review, whatever it might be. If you're on Spotify, feel free to leave a star review. If you want to leave a 5-star, I appreciate it oh so much. If you want to leave something a little bit lower, that's fine. You want to leave a 1-star, that's okay. It's okay. You can beat me down a little bit. It's fine. I just watched my Buffalo Bills lose to the Broncos. It's fine. Maybe next year. I say that every year, but maybe next year will be a better year. But that's besides the point. But yeah, the main thing that you guys can do the most is just hit that share button as well. If you can just share it to your friends, your family, whoever might want to listen to it. Help grow the community of like-minded people. That's the main goal, and hopefully we will continue to grow this podcast platform each and every single week and make it an even bigger thing coming at the end of this year. But let's not worry about the year yet. Let's just worry about having a fun time and getting through each and every single week. As always, though, if you want to keep in touch with me, you can find all my links down below. Find me on all social media accounts at Typhonstein. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Threads, we're on TikTok, we're on X. But the main thing that you can definitely check out is the YouTube channel, where I do old episodes of the podcast every single Monday. I have the weekly game video that drops every single Wednesday. I have daily shorts as well as community posts where you can check out the On This Day in Horror posts. If you want to just check out those posts, though, you can also check them out on Instagram, because we have a Rotten Views podcast Instagram page as well, where I post about the podcast, and I post the On This Day in Horror posts over there as well. So if you want to check out the Instagram and the Facebook and the YouTube, I appreciate that. We also are going to be doing live streams on YouTube again here soon. I'm just got to figure out what game we're going to start the live stream. Might be some Fortnite, might be some horror games. I'm not really too sure yet, so we'll have to wait and see. So definitely make sure to subscribe to all the different accounts, that way you know what's going on, because there's also going to be some drawing streams as well. So we're finally getting closer to getting things set up the way I want them to be, because I'm a little bit picky. I'm a little bit OCD, and I want things to be a certain way so they look good. I don't want things, autofocusing That's been the main issue when looking at these drawing videos I've been doing. The focus on the camera keeps going in and out, and I'm not happy about that at all. I don't like that. So maybe you're looking for some extra content. If you want to, definitely go check out the CWC, Canadian Wrestling Championship page on Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube. YouTube's probably the best thing right now at the moment to check out all the shorts. Also, you can also find them on Instagram as well, and you can find some merch and whatnot on there as well. And the last thing that I'm going to promote, a little shill out to you guys. You can definitely check out the TeePublic site. You want to buy some podcast merch? Got some podcast merch on there. You want to buy some various artwork that I have up there as well, on some pins, stickers, buttons, t-shirt, whatever it might be. Definitely go check out the TeePublic link down in the description below. But I think that's enough of me promoting myself. Let's get back to the movie at hand. Like I said, we are watching The Dark Half from 1993, and it's free to watch on Amazon Prime. I believe it's also on Tubi, but I'm not 100% sure on that. We're not using Tubi just because I'm hoping with Prime having only a couple ads, we'll be able to get through this 2 hours a little bit faster than on Tubi. Initial release date was April 23rd, 1993. It's directed by George A. Romero. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 2 minutes, and the story is by Stephen King. Distributed by Orion Pictures and MGM. This movie has a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the other one on it is 4.8 out of 5 on Vinegar Syndrome. And 59% of Google users have enjoyed this movie, apparently. The description, as read on IMDb: a writer's fictional alter ego wants to take over his life at any price. Pretty straightforward and simple, and that's probably why I like this movie a lot. Spoiler. Yeah, I can't remember when I first saw this movie. It was a long time ago. I've always been a George Romero fan. My parents have always been a Stephen King fan. So when we saw the combination of the two, I think it was on Space maybe at the point in time, we literally sat down, and I remember watching this as a kid. I feel like it didn't have a 2 hour runtime. I'm kind of surprised looking back at that this movie is on for 2 hours and 2 minutes. It doesn't feel like it, or at least it didn't feel like it as a kid. So being the first time watching it, probably in like 10-15 years, let's see how the runtime actually is on it. But let's talk about the director. Let's talk about the writers. Of course, the director is George A. Romero. He's also one of the writers, and of course we very well know who George A. Romero is. Of course, the writer of 2005's Land of the Dead, writer of 2007's Diary of the Dead, writer for the 1968 classic Night of the Living Dead, writer for 1988's A Monkey Shines, executive producer for 2009's Survival of the Dead, executive producer for 2004's Chill Factor House Call. Let's see here. He was the executive producer for 90 episodes from 1983 to 1988 of Tales from the Dark Side. And, he worked on Creepshow. There's a ton of things that he worked on. And, the next person we're going to talk about is Stephen King, the other writer for this. He's done a lot of things as well. Both of these guys have done way too much to talk about. We could talk about them for hours upon hours. But Stephen King, he was the writer for 1982's Creepshow. He's the writer for 1982's Sleepwalkers. I love that movie. I think that movie's great and amazing. I'm just putting that out there. He's the writer for 1984's Shawshank Redemption, as well as the writer for 1986's Maximum Overdrive. That movie is by far one of my all-time favorites, and you guys already know that because that's like episode 1 of the podcast. Probably don't go revisit that because episode 1 through 150 are probably not good, to be honest with you. 100% honest with you, they're probably not that good. Some other things that we can talk about that Stephen King worked on, of course, you got The Dead Zone, you got It, you got Salem's Lot, you got Pet Sematary, you got Carrie, you got Cujo. There's a Boogeyman movie from 2023, which is apparently the story is based on a Firestarter. Strawberry Spring is apparently a podcast series that he's done 6 episodes of in 2021, which I don't know anything about that, but now I'm kind of curious about that. What the heck is Strawberry Spring? I guess that's probably going to be something else we're going to check out now. But he's done a ton of different things, and of course, if you're a horror fan, you definitely know who Stephen King is, So we're going to jump right over to our cast section. Of course, we're going to talk about the main cast member, Timothy Hutton, who's playing the character of Thad. He was also Conrad Jarrett in 1980's Ordinary People. He was Willie Conway in 1996's Beautiful Girls. He was Thomas Wilson in 2006's The Good Shepherd. And he was in 77 episodes from 2008 to 2012 of a TV show called Leverage, where he played Nathan Ford, Sheriff. He's also in 13 episodes from 2019 to 2020 of Almost Family. And he's got other various TV show roles and whatnot. But the next character, it's not top billing by any means, but I saw them in the character cast listing, and I'm like, that guy looks familiar, and I need to talk about him. The next person we're going to talk about is the character Fred Clausen, played by Robert Joy. And honestly, you guys probably don't recognize the name at all, but in 2007, he was Colonel Stevens in Alien vs. Predator Requiem. He was Dr. Hawking in 2008's superhero movie. But two of the movies that I know him the best for, he was Lizard in 2006 version of The Hills Have Eyes, and he was also Charlie in 2005's Land of the Dead. And to be honest with you, I forgot that he was Lizard in The Hills Have Eyes remake, and it makes so much sense. This is definitely a guy you would not know by hearing the name, so definitely just go look him up, and then you'll probably realize who he is. The tagline for this movie is Iconic Terror from the #1 best-selling writer. I feel like that's a cop-out on the tagline. You could have came up with something a little bit more interesting. You don't need to use Stephen King to sell the movie. I get that's probably what he does for most of the taglines. Maybe I could be wrong. I haven't looked at all of them, to be honest with you, and I don't know them off the top of my head, but that's besides the point. We also got some fun trivia. Apparently, Stephen King based this story as kind of based off of true events, because apparently he's basing off of his other ghostwriting synonym, Richard Bachman. So he kind of saying it's him versus his evil self, essentially. I wonder if was Bachman the evil self of King, or is King the evil self? Which one's the evil one? I don't know. You guys let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, I think I hit all the main points that I wanted to discuss about this movie before starting it. I know I should have mentioned this beforehand, but like always with each and every single episode, if you're a returning listener, you already know this. But if you're a new listener, I'm going to be talking about this movie from start to finish and hitting all the points in between. So this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy episode. But then again, this movie came out in 1993, so it's kind of understandable that this is going to be a little bit spoiler-heavy. So please, you can leave comments down below getting mad at me for spoiling things. But if you do, it is what it is. I'm not going to feel hurt about it because, well, I'm warning you right now. So if you want to, feel free to pause this now, go watch it on Prime or Tubi, and then come back and listen to me talk about the movie, or just sit back, relax, listen to me talk about the movie, and I'll either make you really want to go watch it, or you'll be okay with just skipping it. I leave that judgment call up to you at the end of this podcast episode. But with that being said, let's get started on the episode at hand. Hopefully you guys are comfy, relaxed if you're at home. Hopefully you're, sitting back, relaxing. I know some of you guys listen to it when you go to sleep. Good on you. Not sure what's wrong with you. Should probably go get that looked at, but that's besides the point. If you're at work, hopefully this helps you get through the hours. Hopefully this helps you get through the day and all the other fun stuff at work. And if you are, like I know most of you people are, listening in the car, just keep an eye on where you're going. Make sure you get to point A to point B, point C, whatever it might be, nice and safely. Don't cause any accidents. Don't hurt yourself or anyone else around you. And hopefully you guys enjoy this episode, and we're going to get started on the episode at hand right now.
Presents Saturday Night at the Movies, the television series which each week brings you the finest in recent motion pictures. Tonight,
Thad Beaumont has a secret.
I know all about it.
A piece of himself he keeps hidden.
You just don't want to give up George. You become attached to him.
Locked away until he needs it.
These behaviors could be interpreted as schizophrenia.
Away from the light, safe in the shadows.
I wrote those words, and I have no recollection of doing it.
But sometimes secrets take on a life of their own. Thad Beaumont thought he didn't need George Stark anymore.
The American way of death.
That's it.
He served his purpose. Time to lay him to rest. But George is not about to go quietly.
You really don't realize what you're like when you write those books, do you? It's like watching Jekyll turn into Hyde.
We're here to question you in connection with a capital crime.
Evidence says you did it.
George Stark has somehow come to life.
Hello, George.
I can come closer to believing a ghost story than this. You're talking about a man who never was.
He wants to take over your life. Can't you see that?
Based upon a book by Stephen King, comes George A. Romero's masterful vision of a nightmare come true.
Are you ready? Just waiting on you.
The Dark Half.
We got the movie starting out with some nice slow piano style music, and then we see that nice Orion picture release logo coming up on the screen. I love seeing Orion because I know it's going to be a fun time. I enjoy a lot of Orion movies. We get the intro credits slowly starting to play in. The Dark Half font just comes up on the screen. It's nothing fancy. It's just a basic white font, a little bit bold. But then we see a picture of, a shot of bunch of birds and trees, and then they're just all flying away off into the distance. Kind of reminds me of the birds in general, so maybe that's a little homage, a little tribute to Alfred Hitchcock. But then we see we're in 1968, the time period. And then we see young Thad, played by Patrick Brennan, sitting in his room, just, writing his book, writing a story of some sort. You can tell it's definitely a time period piece when he's writing in cursive, because I don't think anyone writes in cursive anymore at all. But then the sounds of the birds chirping start to get to his head, and it looks like he's having a headache or a migraine. And then the next thing you know, we see all the pencils in his holder fall over, the pencil he's writing with, the lead snaps, and then next thing you know, he's getting his eyes examined by a doctor of some sort. And then his mom's like, doctor, I think it's because he's straining his eyes, sitting in the dark, trying to write his stories in the dark, and he's squinting and stuff. Definitely, it's definitely got to be that, right, doctor? The doctor's like, well, could be, maybe. And then the doctor's like, so you want to be a writer, hey, kid? He's like, yes, sir. And the doctor's like, well, if the kid really wants to be a writer, you better go up and buy him a typewriter then, because that's what he deserves. And next thing you know, they got a typewriter. So we see Thad, he's typing up on his typewriter, and next thing his mom's like, hey, you're going to be late for your bus, you got to go, Thad. And Thad finishes off the sentence he's doing. And then next thing we know, we see Thad outside getting ready to walk to the bus. He drops all his school books, and next thing you know, he's, spasming on the ground, holding his head, and next thing you know, he's going in for some surgery. And next thing you know, they got his skull cut open, and they're playing around with his brain, and they poke at his brain, and an eyeball appears inside the brain. He's like, wow, look, he once was a twin, but now it's nothing. It's just kind of like an eyeball stuck in his brain. Guess we should probably extract that. But the doctor's looking, and he's like, well, there's an eyeball, there's part of a nostril, and there's a couple teeth here, and somehow this tooth has a cavity in it. I'm assuming a year ago this was probably nothing, but somehow the twin has started to regrow inside of Thad's brain somehow. And then we cut to like a present day where Thad is with his wife and his two kids, and he's got two twins, and they're playing around with his writings. And he's like, born heirs, huh? It's not that bad, is it? Please tell me my work's not that bad. Play for toys instead of playing with my paperwork. Thad's definitely like really hard on himself. He's like, I stayed up all night, and all I gave you was 9 lousy pages to read. And to Shyla, his wife, and she's like, no, these 9 pages are perfect. This is like going to be a perfect book. He's like, you're just being really nice to me. You don't really actually mean that. And then we jump cut to Thad teaching class at like a college of some sort, or maybe it's a really fancy high school. I'm assuming it's a college. It's hard to tell with these movies what the age period these kids are supposed to be, because they all look like they're 30s. Anyways, he's telling the class how like everyone's their own person. Sometimes they're liars, sometimes they're this, sometimes they're that. We all have the writer built up into our brain, and we gotta let the writer out sometimes. And he's like, you know what, guys, we're going to cut this class short. My inner writer was keeping me up all night last night. Also, by the way, your stories are all due Wednesday, just so you're aware. So make sure your stories are ready for me to read them over and, flunk your ass if I need to. Then we see the whole class leaving, and then there's one student left. And, of course, it's Robert Joy, Fred Clausen. Be like, hey, can you sign your book for me? And he pulls out this book. He's like, that's not my book, actually. I didn't write that at all. And he's like, so you're a phony. Everything's a phony, huh? So next thing we know, we see Thad in his office looking over this book as Fred is trying to describe the author for this book and how this author doesn't write any more books anymore, and that he believes that he's gone on to a different name and he's changed his look and everything to become a different writer, kind of like a ghostwriter essentially. And Fred's like, yeah, so this writer, he wrote a different style story, and then he got really rich off it. And Thad's like, well, not rich enough. And he's like, well, he's going to write me a rich check if he wants me to keep my mouth shut about the books he's wrote beforehand. So then Thad's like, I've wrote about slime before, Clausen, but no slime's as worse as you. And Clausen's like, wow, well, maybe you write me in one of your books then in the near future then. He's like, yeah, I definitely will, and I'm going to torture you in my book. And I'll make sure I torture you in my book. So then Thad signs the book and throws it at Clausen. He's like, so you talk to your people. I'll give you a few days so you can find out what kind of money you're going to pay me, so I don't have to go to the papers to, spoil who you are. And we'll be in touch, all right? Then we see Thad at home. He's pissed off talking to his wife about Clausen, and he hits the dishes. And then next thing you know, the twins wake up, and so it's him and his wife upstairs changing the twins. And for some reason, Thad starts talking about what the killer in his book would do, or the alternate personality would do, and his wife's just looking on, being like, you're talking about killing this guy to your little baby, right? You know that? You probably shouldn't be mentioning this stuff. They're a little bit too young to hear this. So next thing you know, we see them in the kitchen, and Thad's talking to the kids, being like, hey, bye-bye, doing all this fun stuff. And then his wife takes out the turkey, and she goes to pick it up out of the tray, and the whole thing just crumbles apart. And she's like, I think I might have cooked it just a little bit too long. He's like, no, it's totally fine. So then we see Thad calling back his old publishers, and he signed off a deal to write some more trash. And then as they get done hanging up the phone, the old publisher's like, shit. And the one girl's like, man, he shouldn't be writing trash. We got enough other writers that can write trash for us to make money. He should just be happy doing his own thing, making his wholesome books. So we see Thad sitting down with his wife. I thought his wife's name was Shayla, but sorry, my bad, it's Liz. Liz is a little bit upset that Thad's so reluctant to kill off his George character, because apparently George is the do whatever you can, curse whatever you can. It's essentially like his altered ego, his bad persona. Essentially Liz is he's your drinking buddy. And Thad's like, I don't have a drinking problem, so what? I do drink a little bit when I'm writing the stories, but I don't actually have a problem. It's just me trying to get in the mindset to write for this character. He's like, this character, this persona is a part of me. Even the ugliness of it is still a part of me, And I'm just trying to get that part out to the world. So then we see Thad and his New York Times buddy Mike Donaldson going to meet up with Homer Gamache, who's apparently going to take pictures for the next book. He's like, I've seen you around town. Who knew you were famous? He's like, I'm not famous. I'm just a writer. Nothing famous about me at all. And we find out that they're going up to this cabin in the woods that they own. Apparently, they don't get to go there that often, because when Thad's teaching, they gotta stay into the city area, and they're not able to come out to this nice cabin. It's kind of like Thad's little, home away from home, so he can write out his George character easier. We even see inside this cabin that there's a secret doorway that moves with the bookshelf, and it's in a windowless room. And Donaldson's like, it's not really much of a view here. He's like, well, to be honest with you, if there was a window in here, I'd probably just stare at the lake the whole time. So I need darkness. I need all this closed in on me so that I can actually write the George character. And Donaldson at one point in time was like, so was it hard to start the George character? He's like, no, I picked up one of these pencils one night and wrote all night, and next thing you know, I got 16 pages of just him, and it was so simple and so easy. So Donaldson's really confused. He's like, well, I don't want to worry you at all, but this behavior can also be schizophrenia, to be honest with you, that you find it so easy to write about George, and it just comes to you so naturally. So apparently we see Thad and his wife showing up to meet up with Digger, this old guy by a graveyard. He's like, got crazy. Homer wants to set up a bunch of tombstones so you can take some pictures on some fake tombstones so you're not walking on the dead. And then we see this fake tombstone with George Stark's birth and death date on it, and Thad's a little bit shocked, and Homer's like, this is my idea. I was up here taking pictures of teddy bears, and I just thought it would be a good idea. Well, a pretty good idea, don't you think? And then we see Thad and his wife standing behind the tombstone, and Digger's like, oh, damn, if it don't look real, the damn tombstone looks like it's a real prop. And now it's 1 a.m., and we see Homer driving his old truck that's got probably some kind of engine issue because it's smoking up everywhere. And we see someone who's got his thumb sticking out, trying to get a ride, hitchhiking. And he's like, oh, damn, you gotta be a weirdo to be hitchhiking at 1 a.m., so he stops the truck anyways. He's looking back, he's like, oh, that kind of looks like Thad. But it's not Thad, it's the altered ego. It's George Stark. So then the person starts walking closer to the passenger door, and then they disappear. And Homer's leaning out the passenger window being like, where the hell did they go? And then next thing you know, we see someone grabbing Homer and ripping it out of the passenger window. And I didn't know Homer had a prosthetic leg because it gets stuck on the window and it's hanging out the door. And next thing you know, Homer's dead. And then we meet up with our sheriff named Alan Pangborn, maybe? I don't know, was it Pangborn? I think is his last name pronounced, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, it's Alan, but anyways, it's played by Michael Rooker of all people. And of course, it's Digger calling in to the sheriff, and apparently the sheriff has a lot of issues with Digger, because Digger's a little bit, of the crazy townfolk person. Anyways, they're looking at a graveyard spot, and there's a hole in the ground, and Digger's like, see, sheriff, doesn't look weird, doesn't look like somebody was in there, and they dug no way out, Sheriff? And the sheriff's like, you got a clear case of vandalism here. That's how I see it. He's like, look, Sheriff, don't look. The handprints right here, looks like they used that to get themselves out. And he's like, yeah, the person digging the hole got into the hole to dig the hole deeper, and they had to push themselves out. That's what happened, dear. Don't worry about it. It's just a hole in the ground. And then when you have another call coming on the radio, it's in there, one of the sheriff's deputies or something. He's like, we just found Homer, and he's dead in a squash coon or something. And then next thing you know, we see Michael Rooker's character driving over there, and there's a whole bunch of officers over there. There's like probably 6 other officers, police vehicles and whatnot. There's an ambulance showing up as well. And yeah, he's definitely dead. Very dead. And then Officer Hamilton's like, so person across the road said they saw Homer stopping around 1 a.m. to pick up a white male hitchhiker, and come to find out we probably stole the truck because of it. And yeah, we found his leg over there in the grass. Apparently that's what they probably used to beat him to death with it. So I was like, you know what, I want everyone in the world looking for this truck, because I want to find who killed Homer, because Homer did not deserve this at all, and I have a lot of questions to ask the guy. And next thing you know, we see it's late at night. We see the sheriff driving by this used car auto lot. He just happens to stop and look over, and we see a red truck, the Homer truck, that's now just in the back of this used car lot. And it's getting really windy. We can hear some dogs barking in the distance. The officer loses his hat that just goes flying off into the distance somewhere, and he gets to the front of the truck. The window is down, and he looks inside, and there's blood and garbage and stuff all over the truck. And the officer's like, well, he drove it all the way from Maine like this? There's blood all over the dash, there's blood all over the seat, floorboards, everything. So then we see Alan and a couple other officers showing up to talk to Thad. And Thad's like, hey, what are you doing here, Alan? Good to see you, buddy. What's going on? And then the other officers are like, so are you Thad Beaumont? We got to take you into the question, and you're pretty much under arrest right now at this point in time, because we're going to investigate you for a murder. And they're like, well, what's going on? He's like, well, it's about Homer. He's like, the photographer. He's like, well, actually, he's kind of dead now. So now we have some questions to ask. So Thad's starting to get pissed off that they're questioning about this. And he's like, hey, Alan's like, hey, from what I know about you, I know this is probably not something you've done, but I need to question you because it's part of my job, and you're acquaintance of Homer and working with him lately, so I just need to figure out what's going on. And then Thad starts to zone off because he starts to hear birds chirping in his head again. And Alan's like to the other officer, he's like, if this becomes a mistake, I'm going to personally find the person who did a fake ID, and I'm going to rip their skin off. And Thad's like, ID, what are you talking about? He's like, well, someone said it kind of looked like you. So then Thad's wife starts to think that's Clausen, and Alan's like, who? He's like, well, this is a Clausen guy, lives in New York. This is why I went public with the story, because he's trying to blackmail me to get money out of it. So I figured I'd just beat him to the punch and just, blackmail. The blackmail wouldn't be worth anything if I'm already talking to, the Time magazine and everything else. And one of the reasons Alan's saying that they're there is because they fed his record through, or his facial thing through a computer. Anyways, but the fingerprints came back as an exact match for the murder of Homer. Then we see Thad showing up in this black, old sounding muscle car. Not sure what kind of car it is. Anyways, he's getting out of the passenger seat by the looks of it. And then next thing you know, he's walking into this house, and the vase breaks. And then we hear babies crying, or actually laughing maybe. And then he's walking by like what looks to be a furnace, but it might be a stove, because then the stove door cracks, and then he's looking inside, and there's a turkey cooking. And then the turkey starts to crack, and there's like a narration going on over top of everything that's happening. Then Thad goes to turn to walk away and hits a baby bag, and a toy squeaks. And then we hear someone be like, "Oh, Hoss, you always were the clumsy one." And then we see someone in black cowboy boots and black pants stepping over the baby bag. And we see Liz tied up in a chair, but her face is painted white with some red designs on top of it, and it looks like it's cracking. And it does crack because it's like a porcelain face, and then underneath we see just a skull, and then we see Thad waking up from a nightmare. We then jump cut to New York, where we see Clausen's landlord taking some officers to his apartment, and they come in and they're disgusted by the smell because Clausen is dead inside of this room, and we see with blood written on the walls that the sparrows are calling again. And that's the sound of the birds that keeps messing up Thad's head. Then as Thad is sitting down, I think he's grading some of the students' paperwork, and he's trying to make corrections. We then see him writing on the paper being, "The sparrows are flying again." And next thing you know, Liz is showing up being like, "Hey Thad, Alan's back again." He's like, oh, okay, that's good. Alan brought over some brewskis to, chill and relax with Thad and Liz. He's like, I don't have any reason to be here, especially socializing with someone who's the suspect for not just one, but now 2 murders. And Thad's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, your buddy Clausen there that you told us about, he was found dead. And apparently your fingerprints were found on the Clausen at his home as well. So we're trying to figure out what's going on here. And then Alan told Thad how Clausen was killed, and Thad's just like, yeah, that's what I actually told him I want to do. I told him that's what Alexis Machine, one of my characters in my book, would do to someone. And he's like, I'm don't look at me like that. Wouldn't be telling you this if I did it. I'm just telling you it was a joke that I made to him because he pissed me off because he was trying to blackmail me. And I'm just being honest with you. And then next thing you know, Alan's like, so also, there was something written on the wall in blood called the sparrows are coming again. Does that mean anything to you? He's like, no, that doesn't mean anything to me at all, no. So that's when then Thad's seeing Liz being like, I wrote this on the student's paper, and I was in a trance, and I didn't know what was going on. But did I ever tell you, like, when I was a kid, the brain tumor, certain people, they can smell things or hear things that's not there. And what I used to hear was always birds chirping. And Liz is like, well, you got definitely go to the doctor again. You might have a brain tumor. He's like, no, I don't. It's just, there's other things that are happening, and I just don't know what's happening, and I don't know how people know about the birds because I haven't said anything about the birds before. So then we see Thad back at the college, and he's in his office, and then out of nowhere, he hears the sparrows chirping again, and he starts to struggle. He starts shaking his coffee, sits down at his desk, then, just throws all the pencils all over the place, rips down a piece of paper, no lines on it, and just starts scribbling all over it, and just a lot of nonsense. There's, the word razors, there's flying, there's birds, there's all these other words, and the next thing you know, he snaps out, and he's just staring at the paper, and it's just got scribbles all over it. So then we come back to New York where we see Miriam, one of the publishers, going into her apartment. She gets ready to unlock her apartment door, but then the door comes open and she's all confused. And next thing you know, we see someone grabbing her and smash her head off the door frame, and then she's getting dragged into the apartment. And of course, it's the evil version of Thad, holding her hostage essentially so she can make a phone call. So then the evil version of Thad makes Miriam call Thad. I know that sounds confusing, but it is what it is. And she's like, well, what am I going to say to him? And he's like, well, I'm sure you'll probably figure something out. And of course she calls his number, and of course it goes right to voicemail. And then he's like, well, I guess you better figure something else out to say to him. Let him know who's here and who you are. And she goes to say that there's a very bad man here, and then he cuts the phone line, and we see the evil version of Thad. He's got his hair slicked back, he's dressed all in black. So then Thad hears the voice message and calls Alan and tells Alan about it. And Alan's like, alright, I'll call the NYPD. We'll get a hold of New York. We'll figure things out and we'll go from there. And he's like, yeah, I tried to call her back. There was no answer. I was going to call New York PD myself. I feared there'd be a whole runaround. That's why I'm calling you, Alan. And then we just literally have Thad pacing back and forth in his house with his phone being like, alright, I hope somebody calls me soon so we can figure out what's going on here. I'm a little worried about Miriam. And then the phone finally does ring and he finds out that Miriam is dead. And Thad is telling Alan on the phone because Alan's the one that's breaking news to him. He's like, I think he's going to go after Rick Calloway. He's also the one that works with Miriam, and I think he's also going to go after Mike Donaldson, but I don't know where he lives, and I just don't know what's going on. And Alan's like, I need to know anything that you know right now. I'm trying to cut you every break possible that I can, but if you don't break down everything to me right now, right tonight, I can't help you anymore. And then Thad starts to describe the person that he thinks might be doing the whole murdering things. And he's describing everything about him and what he drives, where he lives and everything. And he's describing the character from his book, essentially. And then we come back to New York City where we see Donaldson getting off an elevator, and then I'm not sure if he's getting off on the wrong floor or not, but the whole lighting system is just flashing red and blue. And he tries to get the elevator to open again, but it won't open. He's like, shit. So then next thing you know, he's walking around with his lighter in his hand just to try and figure out where he's going down this hallway. Then his lighter goes out, and he starts to freak out a little bit, because then he hears another Zippo opening up, and then he hears a man whistling off in the distance. So then he starts freaking out a little bit, bursts open this one doorway, and this room has like a fire exit and whatnot, but it seems like it's lit up, but now a baby's crying. So now he's like, okay, I guess I'll walk back out into the main hallway and run down, because now this light is lighting up the hallway enough for me to get to my apartment. And of course, he fumbles his keys, drops them on the floor, and he goes to pick them up, and then the evil Thad George steps on his hand and then pulls out the straight razor and just slashes him in the forehead. Donaldson's got like this rat tail ponytail, and at one point in time Thad just like throws the straight razor up and cuts it off, and Donaldson's banging on doors trying to get help, and one guy opens up the door being like, what's going on? And evil Thad's like, murder. You might want to shut your door though. Then we see Donaldson like dead up against the side of this register, and we see the elevator popping open, and evil Thad hides off to the side. And two officers are like, what's that down the hallway? He's like, oh Jesus Christ, is that the guy we're supposed to be keeping safe? And they run down to go check on it, and it's Donaldson. And then we just see evil Thad standing in the elevator giving them the little salute. And they're like, maybe that's not the guy. And now it's the next morning, and we see Rick waking up to a phone call, and it's evil Thad on the other end being like, morning, Rick. This is the man who slit your ex-wife's throat open. You can ask Thad all about me. He knows all about me. And Rick's freaking out, being like, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? What's going on here? So now the next day, and we see Alan sitting down to talk to Thad and Liz. And Alan's like, so you're going to give me a name now, Thad? He's like, I already gave you a name. It's George Stark. And he's like, I don't know what you mean. Liz is like, well, apparently Thad thinks George Stark came alive from his book, and there's someone out killing like George Stark, or pretending to be George Stark, and they're trying to get to everyone that's related or has any connection to Thad. So we see Thad and Alan walking outside, and Thad's like, you don't believe me at all, do you? He's like, I'd have a better chance believing a ghost story and that ghosts are going around killing people than believing this story, Thad. Like, where did this guy come from? Did you give birth to him? Did he give birth from a sparrow egg? Well, like, what's going on? I'm all here for like crazy things, but like, you're telling me that he's a character from your novel. I mean, you might think he's George Stark, I'll give you that, but he's not George Stark because he can't be a character from your book. Then we see two officers escorting Cowley back to his apartment or his home, and he's like, Cowley, you gotta wait, officer. You gotta wait, officer protocol. There should be an officer communication here. Should be one inside and one outside the apartment. The one outside the apartment is not here, so we're gonna have to go investigate inside your apartment first to make sure everything's safe. The one officer walks in like 5 feet, and the other officer's like, well, maybe they never showed up. I guess we'll just won't search the rest of the home at all, because that makes too much sense. Then we see Callie walking through his home a little bit, and he gets to the washroom to go to the piss, and that's when we find the two officers that were supposed to be there dead inside of his bathtub. And then he's like, Jesus Christ, I gotta go let the other officers know. And that's when he turns around, evil Thad shows up and just literally slices his throat across from side to side. So then we see Thad getting off the phone and finding out that Rick is dead, and he's pissed off because he's like, you police officers were supposed to be keeping him alive and keeping him safe, and you clearly can't even do that. So then we see officers setting up bug lines inside of his home, and the next thing you know, the phone rings as soon as Thad hangs it up earlier, and Thad's like, I know it's George. I know it's George on the other line, and it is George on the other line, and the officers are listening in on the call, and we hear George saying how he's going to get revenge for everything, and the officers are listening to it the whole time. George is trying to say that, it's over, he doesn't have to worry about Thad anymore, and Thad doesn't have to worry about him anymore. And Thad's like, I'm going to be ready for you. I'm going to hear the birds. I'm going to hear the sparrows when you're coming. I'm going to be ready to rip you apart. He's like, George is like, what are you talking about, Thad? I don't know anything about no birds. But anyways, click hangs up, and next thing you know, we find out the phone call was made from a payphone, because Alan's talking about it, and then Alan's like, also, a couple people are thinking that maybe you're working with an accomplice, and Thad gets pissed off about it. He's like, well, to be honest with you, weirder things have happened lately, seems Thad. Alan's like, I think there's a cycle out there that's trying to get to you, because, you named off all the kills, or the people that are going to be killed before the killer even got to them. What are we supposed to do here? Clearly, there's someone out there trying to get to you and make you pay for everything. So Thad tries to go stop at a little convenience shop to pick up some goods, Tylenol and whatnot. And then the phone in the store rings, and Rosalie picks it up. The clerk's like, Mrs. Beaumont, Mr. Beaumont, the phone call's for you. And Thad walks over to be like, so George, how's it going? What's up? And it's pretty much George being like, either you go home and start another book, or you're gonna die like no other man has ever died on Earth before. We see Thad going to work. One of the officers is leaving to follow him to work to make sure nothing happens. And he's calling for backup, being like, hey, I'm taking Thad to work. You should probably have another car come out here to watch the house just to be on the safe side. And Liz is having a very hard time inside because the twins are both crying inside the crib. Because even the best toys that they like the most, it's not calming them down at all. They're just still having a hard time. And of course, she's probably worried for herself and the twins as well that, George is going to come by and, slice their throats open. You see Thad sitting down in his office at the college, and he's pulling out the paper, pulling out the basic black number 2 pencil, and he's just talking to himself, being like, come on, George, let me in, George. I need to know what I'm doing here, George. I need to know what my next stage is. So it's essentially him trying to write the next book to kind of maybe keep George at bay. But as he's sitting there thinking, birds start showing up on the windowsill of the office. So at this point, Thad looks over at the window, and he sees a bunch of sparrows on the windowsill, being like, oh, the sparrows are actually real. And as he's looking over at the windowsill, he just randomly starts writing with his hand and not realizing that he's writing at all. So as he's staring at the birds and writing on this paper, he's talking to his hand as his hand's writing. And then next thing you know, we see the pencil being stabbed into his hand. And he's screaming, coming back to sense. And then we see George sitting at a table, and the pencil's hanging out of his hand. And he's just having a cigarette with his foot up on the table, drinking some booze, pulls the pencil out of his hand, just pours the booze on it. No big deal. Just a typical night for George. Then we see George going into this other room where he turns on a light. It might be a washroom. He's putting his hand up to the light, and we can actually see the pencil stabbed all the way through because we can see through the other side. But then we also see him playing with a scar that's below his eye as he starts wiggling around a little bit, and some brown-ass looking ooze starts coming out of it. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be blood or not, but it's brown, and it's really liquidy. Then we see Thad getting patched up by maybe one of the school nurses. He's like, I'm going back to Bangor. And she's like, what's there? And he's like, well, that's where I had surgery as a kid. There might be nothing there at all, but man, I need to at least figure it out. So then this old teacher lady gives Thad like a hat and glasses and the keys to her car so he can try and, escape without other people seeing. And he literally drives by the state trooper that brought him to work. And he doesn't notice at all that this little punch buggy is, driven by Thad. Then we see George coming out of this hotel at Bangor and driving away in his black Tornado that has the Mississippi license plate on it, just like Thad said. We see Thad back talking to his doctor, and he's like, maybe we should take some more pictures of your brain. A lot of us do start out as twins, and it's just it's just a completely weird puzzle that happened with you, that you had a twin growing in your brain essentially. And then the doctor says to Thad, he's like, it's kind of weird your parents want the extra tissue to be signed off as like another person so that they could actually bury it. And Thad's like, and the family plot is like, I'm not really too sure, to be honest with you. But did they ever tell you about the sparrows? And Thad's like, with the sparrows? It's like, a bunch of sparrows just showed up at the hospital when we were doing your surgery. And the doctor's in the washroom washing up his hands. He's like, it's so weird. You complain about the birds in your head. And it's like, we took the sound out of your head and then the birds came alive. And then next thing you know, we see George showing up. He's grabbing the doctor by the back of the head and push him up against the wall and covering up his mouth, being like, hey, doc, remember me? And then we just see George slicing the doctor's throat open. And Thad doesn't hear anything because he's just sitting at the table looking over the doctor's notes. We then hear the engine of a car revving up and we hear the horn honking. And that's when Thad opens up a window and sees the black Tornado driving away, and he's all freaked out. And then he knows that the doctor is dead in the washroom, and then he calls Lizzie Big. Liz, you need to get the kids ready. You need to get away from the house. I'm in Bangor. You need to get everyone safe because George is here. He's already killed somebody, and you need to get to safety. And Thad's like, just go somewhere safe. Don't tell anyone where you are. If you need to get hold of me, just contact Reggie at the school. I'm assuming that's the one that gave him the car to get away. And he's like, you can't tell her where you are either. You can't tell anyone that might tell me where you are because I can't know. Because if I know where you are, then George is going to know where you are. And of course, the phone lines are tapped, so then the officers hear what's going on. So the state trooper comes in, being like, hey, you can't leave. And Liz calls Alan to be like, hey, I need to get out here. Stark could be here. And Alan's like, there is no Stark. You need to just stay there with the officers. We have police protection, and everything's going to be fine. You just can't leave the house. Just stay there. So then we see Thad sitting down with Reggie. That is the lady from the school that gave him the punch bug in a little disguise. And she's saying how, George is such a bad guy. And, Thad's like, well, he's everything I kind of want to be, like a badass, he does whatever he wants, can do anything, essentially. He's a manly man. And Reggie's like, well, he's a bastard. He's an asshole. He's a jerk. You don't want to be that type of person. And of course, while Thad is with Reggie, the phone rings and she picks it up. And of course, the phone is for Thad because it's always for Thad. So then Thad's like, George, I'm not going to write your book for you. You're going to stay dead. And George's like, Hoss, you better write my book by nightfall. You're going to be a sore son of a bitch. He's like, how about you guess where I'm calling from? Squeaky toy, squeaky toy. And of course, George is now somewhere in Thad's house. Thad is running to the car, and Reggie is following after him, being like, you can't let him seduce you. He knows just as much as you do about yourself as he does about you. And then they get distracted because up in the sky, there's thousands upon thousands of sparrows just flying around. And then we see all the officers outside of Thad's house, and of course the officer on duty is dead and being put into the back of the ambulance. One of the other state troopers is talking to Alan. He's like, I'm pretty sure Thad did it. And I was like, well, why do you think that? He's like, well, we got positive ID on Bangor, the doctor's dead. And of course it's probably him that killed my officer here, because his wife is gone as well, and so are the kids, unless they're dead somewhere. Then we come back to the cabin now, and we see George is there. He's got the fire poker playing in the fire, and we see his face is a little bit more messed up. It's got a little bit more bandage on it. We see more scarring. Apparently, by the sounds of it, because Thad has decided to stop writing for him, so that's slowly starting to kill the character of George. And we also see Liz is on a chair tied up, and the kids are in a little playpen. They seem safe so far. And the whole reason why George has come after them is because he believes Thad owes them for everything. If it wasn't for his character, Thad wouldn't have anything. And then Liz is like, so you come after him and his family because you're a coward? And George is like, you better not say that, because you're not in a place to make me angry right now. And George's like, I got some physical problems right now. I'm losing my teeth and everything else is happening. But once Thad gets here and writes out one last story, we're going to be rock and rolling, because we're working so close together. He might catch what I got and might start falling apart. But, the best of us will stay alive at least. So then we have a flashback to that dream that Thad was having, but now it's the real thing. Thad walks into the cabin, the vase doesn't break, the wood stove doesn't break, but he sees Liz tied to the chair and runs over to her, and her face doesn't crack at all. She's still fine, and then we see behind, in the background, George is walking around holding both of the kids. So then George is like, hey Thad, you're not looking so well. Thad's like, same with you, you're not looking that well either. And Thad's like, so if I do what you want me to do, you promise not to hurt my family or my kids? He's like, yeah, you got the promise of a southern man here. I won't hurt the kids at all. So Thad gets one of the kids back, and George is holding the other kid with a gun pointed at him, and Thad goes over to Liz being like, hey, I'm going to go upstairs, I'm going to go write this, don't do anything crazy, don't give him a reason to hurt you. He can't physically hurt me, because then he's hurting himself. You just need to just sit here, relax, and we'll get everything sorted out. So we see Thad and George going into the secret office area to write inside the cabin, and Thad is writing away, no problem, and then George is looking at the paper with the pencil being like, I don't know what to write. And this whole time they're doing this, Liz is still in the chair, and she's trying to break her way out of the chair. Liz has the chair moved over enough to where the fireplace is. She's trying to cut it on I think the bar grate that you put in front of the fireplace so the kids can't go in. But as she's trying to cut the ropes off her wrist, we then hear the fluttering wings of the sparrows starting to show up. So then we cut back to Thad and George sitting at the desk, one on either side, and Thad's like, hey George, why don't you start writing there, huh? You haven't wrote anything to try and get in yet. And George is just like, I'm scared, Hoss, I don't know what to do. And then he just starts scribbling some stuff all over the paper, and Thad's kind of confused as to what he's even writing. And now that George is writing, he's trying to get the joys of it, I guess. He's starting to mumble, he's starting to laugh, starting to smile, and then the birds start getting louder and louder, and now they're actually affecting Thad, because he can hear the birds in the office, and he's starting to hold his head. And then we cut back to Liz, who's still trying to cut her arms free, and we're looking out the windows, and we just see the windows being covered by birds flying all around. And now we can see Thad, he's starting to leak from the head, he's starting to get bruised on his jaw area, and we look back over at George, and we can slowly see him starting to heal. So George starts getting more excited about the way he's writing, and then Thad makes a move for the gun, and George grabs him by the hand. He's like, Hoss, you shouldn't mess with me. I can know what you're thinking, and you shouldn't try it at all, Hoss. So Thad's like, you can't hurt me, George. You can't hurt me at all. He's like, no, I can't hurt you, but I can definitely hurt some other people around here in the room. So then Thad jumps over the desk to try and beat the crap out of George, and then George knocks him to the ground, and just out of nowhere, just sacks him, because, he's a dirty fighter. So then Thad finally gets back up and starts beating George with the light to the point where he actually drops the switchblade now. Now they're fighting in complete darkness, and George throws Thad down on the desk and gets ready to grab the gun to kind of shoot him with it, but then Thad starts reaching around, finds one of the pencils on the desk, and stabs George right in the throat with it. George pulls the pencil out of his throat, and then kind of like stumbles around, knocks into the bookcase, and then pretty much just drops right down to the ground, face down. And we see that Thad's face is now healing up, and we see the house is surrounded by sparrows. And Thad believes that the sparrows are there to take George back to the devil where he belongs. Because Reggie was saying that she was reading one of the books, and that sparrows are like a conduit, and they're able to take souls back to where they belong, I guess. Or something along those lines. Thad hears Liz screaming for him, and Thad's, with the kids. He's like, I gotta go open the door. But next thing you know, we see Thad getting grabbed by George and getting tossed across the room. And then the whole room starts to shake, and the books start to fall off the shelf. And Thad's like, hey, George, the sparrows are coming here to write the ending. Is it going to be my ending, or is it going to be yours? And then we see the walls starting to have holes show up, because the sparrows are all outside the room, trying to peck into the room. So then George starts to get scared, and he's like, alright, Hoss, I'm going to give you one last chance. You stop doing whatever this is doing here, and, do the right ending. And Thad's like, I ain't doing anything, Hoss. I'm just sitting here waiting to see what's going to happen. That's all I'm doing. So then George decides to point the gun at one of the kids, which then pisses off Thad. So Thad jumps up, grabs the typewriter, and smashes George in the hand with it. And then next thing you know, we see the wall breaking down and all the sparrows just flying in, filling up the whole room. And then we see the front door, somebody's banging on it. We think it's the birds banging on it, but it's actually Alan breaking into the house. And Liz is on the ground, yelling over for Alan. He's like, what the hell is going on here? And then she tries to explain that Thad is upstairs with George, and they're trying to write the end of the story, and he's totally confused as to what's going on. And then we cut to the room where we see Thad. He's holding his kids as the sparrows are all pretty much covering up George's body and slowly ripping him apart. Which, to be honest with you, is a really cool scene, because we see those sparrows getting really in there and like picking right down to the bone, essentially. We then see Liz taking Alan upstairs to the secret doorway that leads into the office. As soon as they open up that doorway, they see all the sparrows coming out, and then we see them walking in closer, and we see George's character being pretty much ripped down to the bone by the birds. And then as soon as there's just like his rib cage and a little bit of a spine left, we see the birds taking that and flying out the window, or the wall. Essentially, it's a window they made in the wall, and going off into this weird space-looking system into the sky. And Alan's watching as they all fly into this like portal. We see like what looks to be the moon or the sun, and then there's another like sun-looking shape beside it, and they're just being sucked into it. And as Alan's looking at the hole in the wall, as the last birds disappear, the outro credits start to roll in, and that's the end of the movie. And I gotta say, this movie is pretty good. I didn't remember all these special effects. I really do like the special effects in this. So, like the decaying face on George there for a while, and then the end scene when the birds are ripping apart George, and like we literally see his face, and like they're ripping out his eye socket and the flesh off his cheekbones and everything, right down to the skeleton. I thought that was really cool. I like. It's got a pretty good cast in it, it's awesome seeing Robert Joy in it, seeing the other various cast members like Michael Rooker, and I think Timothy Hutton does a really good job playing the character of Thad and George, and I just thought it was a really good movie. I enjoy it a lot, and for being a 2-hour-long movie, I still think it has a really good runtime and plays really good. There's no real boring parts. There's good kills throughout the movie, and the pacing is really well done. On the Rotten scale, out of 10, I'm giving this one a solid, I'm going to say an 8. I was thinking a 7.5, but I like the practical effects that much that I'm going to bump it up to an 8. And I definitely highly recommend checking this one out if you guys haven't checked it out. Like I said, it's by Stephen King and George A. Romero, so you can't go wrong with the combination of those two working together. I just think it's amazing, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't. And check out the book as well, because it's pretty good as well. From what I remember reading it back in high school. That was a long ass time ago, but besides the fact that I remember it being fairly decent. Which brings us to a point in time where we gotta pick what we're watching next week. So I decided to go on Tubi. It's been a while since I've been on Tubi, been a couple weeks, I think. So, as soon as I opened up the app, this movie popped up right on the home screen. I've never heard it before. I've never seen it before. I know nothing about it. But we're going to watch it because it sounds interesting. This movie is a comedy horror movie. It's from 1989. It's got a runtime of an hour and 39 minutes. It's called Blades. The description read on Tubi: a demonically possessed lawnmower with a taste for human flesh begins attacking members of a country club in a small New Jersey town. How can you go wrong with that? It's an 80s movie with a demonic lawnmower. It sounds stupid as hell, and we're going to watch it because, well, you know, it's funny. Why not? You know, we can think about nice grass and being sunny outside and not cold and windy because, you know, it's wintertime here in Canada and it kind of sucks, to be honest with you. But that's besides the point. But hopefully you guys will check out that movie next week. I'm hoping it's going to be a fun one. I don't know anything about it, so it could suck for all we know. But, you know, if it does, it does. That's the whole point of doing this podcast. So as always, make sure to check out the outro band, Toronto-based horror band Blood Opera. You can find all the links down in the description below. But if you're listening on Spotify, they are directly linked to each and every single episode. So if not, you know, check them on Amazon Music or YouTube, wherever you listen to your music. And as always, you can find me on all social media accounts at Typhonstein. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel where we post old episodes of the podcast every single Monday. Every Wednesday is a new gaming video. We do live streams. We have daily shorts over there as well as community posts that come out daily as well. And check out the CWC Canadian Wrestling Championship page on Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube now. And if you want to support the podcast, buy a little bit of merch, feel free to check out the TeePublic links site down below for some podcast merch
or some other random artwork that I do. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys all later. Peace.